President Bola Tinubu's proposed tax policies on Wednesday faced fresh opposition, days ahead of their planned takeoff, as a new opposition group called on the president to halt their implementation or risk mass protests. Chille, Igbawua, who is a spokesperson of the group, the National Opposition Movement, said the opposition would work with ordinary Nigerians to resist the taxes in the event that the government insists on going ahead. Igbawua described the reforms as anti-people, adding that contrary to official claims, the policy is not a tax reform, but an assault on the livelihood of ordinary Nigerians. Well, Chille Igbawua joins us now to share further reasons his group is protesting the Tinubu tax reforms. Thanks for joining us, Chille. Welcome to Newsday.
Thank you, Hawa.
Well, you've described the new tax laws as an assault on the livelihood of ordinary Nigerians. The government claims that these reforms actually provide relief for low-income earners by raising the tax-exempt threshold to 800,000 naira. Why do you believe that the reality for the poor will be different?
Well, the reality in the tax document itself is very clear. Those who are going to be taxed, which includes both those in the formal and informal sector, the ceiling is very, very low, and is below the lowest minimum wage earner. So if we take that to the informal sector, you will see that every other person, artisans who are just aching out a living, we have to pay taxes. And even where people are employed in informal sectors on very low salaries, the employers are supposed to file tax returns on them within a period of 3 months, failing which penalties begin to apply. Now, people in those categories, not all of them will have a TIN number because they are supposed to be outside the tax net. But then the employers are required to make returns on them or face penalties. So what we have seen, if we look at the entire document together, is that the tax captures virtually everybody. And with that is unfair. There must be exemptions for those who are just aching a living from whatever they're doing from taxes. But the reality on the document doesn't show that. And that is why we're complaining.
Now, some analysts say that this protest from the national opposition movement is not really driven by genuine public interest, but rather political calculations ahead of the 2027 elections. I'd like you to react to that.
Well, I think it's only those who are completely politically, oriented that would say that. The fact is that as I sit here, every day I wake up, deductions are undertaken in my accounts while I'm sleeping. And there is indication that these deductions are being made and paid to the federal government. So access has been granted to my own accounts. So I've lost my privacy even in areas of accounts I hold with the bank under a different contract. So that couldn't be something political. Secondly, we've been told even by the aviation authorities that these taxes are going to raise airfares by over 300%. That cannot be political. It means that those who can now afford to fly will cease to have that ability to fly by 1st of January 2026. That also is not political. So I don't see how that can be seen to be politically motivated, agitations. And like I say, we're agitating, we're not protesting yet. We're just agitating for now and calling on the federal government to reconsider because these are inhuman prescriptions in these tax laws. And except the interest of the local, the ordinary Nigerian is not in place, I think that there should be no reason to proceed with those taxes at this point.
One of your criticisms, or one of the group's criticisms of this tax reform is the requirement for all adults employed or not to file in their tax returns by March 31st of next year. Now, given Nigeria's high unemployment rate, our poor internet penetration, etc., what specific social and economic consequences do you foresee that will be enforced?
Well, what we foresee is that people may be penalized not because they are resisting taxes, but they will be penalized because they simply don't have internet access, because of poor services. And there's nothing they can do if they don't have those services, but in the end, they will be penalized. Secondly, if you have employees, for instance, who are below the tax, outside the tax net, and they don't have TIN numbers, how do you make returns on them? Those are some of the issues that we're raising. So the modalities for execution don't even seem to be clear. But what we see is that it's going to cause a lot of problem, particularly for those in the low income bracket. So we're not talking about those who have the ability to enjoy themselves with their wealth. We're talking about those who are in difficult situations. And we have them around us. If we are not directly there, we have them and we talk to them every day. So I think it's a reality that except those who don't have dependents or those who don't have family ties would suggest that this agitation is politically motivated.
So is the opposition movement, that's your group, offering credible alternative tax policies, or are you merely rejecting the reform, seeing as some analysts actually believe that the current tax law in Nigeria is outdated and should be reformed?
Even in our presentation yesterday, we did offer suggestions. And I'm sure you've listened that even before, while we were giving our press conference, there was also a motion on the floor of the House of Representatives at which we're being told that the document itself was doctored. So as we speak, we're not even sure of the legality of that document. But besides that, we've said, when this tax stuff came up, it was roundly rejected even by the National Economic Council. It was rejected, and a lot of effort was made to persuade people to agree with it. I think that maybe in the end, those who agreed in good faith, in anticipation that some of the issues that were being raised would be corrected before the act would come in force. But I believe that they were not. We know that when you hold public hearings on bills, particularly bills of this nature, which affect the generality of Nigerians, the views expressed at those public hearings should be taken into cognizance before making a decision on putting the act in force. And we believe that not much of that was considered. As an organization, we may not have put up a particular submission on what should be done at that point, but several other persons in their personal capacities made their presentations to the public hearings. But the issues that were raised, we feel that if they were considered before the final document came out, it shouldn't have been the way it is.
And the group has called for taxing of luxury and excess profits instead of the poor. What specific sectors or oligarchs are you targeting, and has your group been able to calculate how much revenue that would actually generate in comparison to the bill?
Well, our first consideration is about fairness. That's the first consideration. The details of who are those in those categories of luxuries and and excess profits are there. They are known. The tax authorities know those who are there. And we believe that if the essence is to up your tax that you rake in, you should look in the areas of those who have the capacity to pay and not burdening those who certainly don't have the capacity to pay. But that's what this tax law puts before us. So those areas that we have mentioned are known. And if discussions have to be held on it, I'm sure that we can point them out one by one and say that this area you can tax, and it will be fair that you are taxing them, but certainly not those who will have to go looking for money to come and pay the tax when they're not sure whether they will have the next meal or not.
Very well said. Honorable Chille Igbawua, spokesperson, National Opposition Movement, thank you so much for joining us on Newsday.